Before getting to questions and answers on leasing, Joseph W. Brady offers this advice.
As I said in our first segment, find a commercial broker in the high desert region that's got 5 years of experience when you're doing leasing. Not a residential person that doesn't know. I don't care if they're your daughter, your nephew, they're your best friend, or your neighbor. Your lease is one of your biggest liabilities and one of your biggest assets. So your lease, if done right, becomes an asset on your balance sheet. If you do it wrong, it becomes a liability in your balance sheet, plus it becomes a liability in your life, and it becomes a liability in your business. So the 327 questions we talked about in an earlier segment. My name's Joseph Brady. I'm a CCI and SIOR. I have the two highest professional designations in commercial real estate. I've been in the high desert region for 34 and a half years. We've completed a little bit over $900 million in sales and leasing. We've owned multiple companies, including Coldwell Banker, Golden West Real Estate in Barstow, Alliance Management Group, Barstow Real Estate Group, and I'm proud to be the president of the Bradco companies. We are the longest serving commercial broker within the region. So this little booklet, which we make available to our prospective tenants, once we've shown them a property and written what we call a letter of intent, will include 327 questions. But Terry, we're just going to go through 15 kind of basic ones to start with. So the first thing in the lease, you want to know who the parties are. Does the lease correctly describe both the landlord and the tenant and their full legal names, the correct states of incorporation, and their business principal addresses? Kind of basic stuff. Number two, is the term specified by a number of years or months plus the commencement and termination dates? So what happens is, I'm talking to a tenant and I say, I'll give you a 3-year lease, I'll give you 2 months of free rent. Does that mean I'm going to give you 3 years plus 2 months, or am I going to give you 3 years including 2 months? Okay. Number three, if the commencement is estimated, are the parties required to sign a letter confirming the commencement and termination dates? So what happens if you're moving more so into a new building where the landlord is anticipating when the building will be done, that's when you have an estimation of time, or you have a landlord that has agreed to do the tenant improvements in an existing building and you're hoping that you're going to be there on time. So what happens if, Terry, I'm leasing you a space and it's January right now, January 2023 that we're filming this, and I promise you that tenant improvements are going to be done by April 1st, okay? So I'm the landlord, so I'm dictating the date, but what happens if I don't deliver it to you on time and now you're moving from another place and you've made decisions, or you're moving and you've got material? Those dates are really important. Premises. Does the lease fully and accurately describe the premises, including the floor or suite number, street address, city, state, and zip code? Have you, the tenant, gone in and actually measured the space? We had a case years and years ago. The tenant said to me one day, can you measure my space for me because I'm having a problem with my landlord? And so I just pasted it off by counting tiles. And I said, I think you have X number of square feet. And we determined, so I had him bring in an architect. The architect charged him about $1,000. And he measured, and the landlord was charging from the back of the curb with the overhang walkway, including the space. I personally believe it was an oversight. It was not done intentionally. But that tenant had been paying for, at that time, about 54 months of that, probably 150 feet at $1.25 a foot. Now, $1.25 a foot was a lot back then. So I helped the tenant prepare a letter to the landlord and said, I want to renegotiate a lease, but we need to take care of this. And oh, by the way, how are we going to take care of the back overage? So you want to be sure that you fully describe the lease, that you know your square footage. Next one. If the lease refers to attached exhibits showing the legal description, location of the premises and building, are they attached? A lot of times you'll see a lease, because they're kind of canned, the AR leases are like 14 pages long, and they'll talk about exhibits, and sometimes it just by accident. The broker, the landlord, both, they forget to sign it, they forget to attach it. At the end of the day, tenant can't come back 2 years later, a month later, a week later and say, hey, you screwed me over, you took advantage of me. if you're old enough to sign a lease, you have to be old enough to take the ramifications. So you definitely want to check that. Next one, if the tenant leases more than the specified number of square feet, let's say 3,000 square feet, is the landlord prohibited from relocating the tenant? Landlord's not precluded from relocating a tenant as long as the tenant agrees to that. So in a lot of leases, the landlord will put a provision in that says, Terry, I know that you're in 2,500 square feet, but if, let's say, the adjoining space next to you becomes available and I get a tenant I really want, I have the right to move you to a similar space, similar square footage, similar orientation, nothing impacting your business, and probably paying for that expense, moving, maybe some upgraded deals, upgraded tenant improvements and things like that. So if you're in a big shopping center, the retail landlords really want to have the ability to move some of the more premier, tenants towards the middle. So if Starbucks comes along and says, I really want that space where, let's say, Baskin Robbins was walking in the Vaughn Center that I remember well over at the Vaughn Center, and I'm willing to pay you $4 a square foot, and Baskin Robbins is paying you $1, and the landlord has the option to move Baskin Robbins, he may take that option. So you just need to be sure that you understand that if that happens, what the landlord has to do to compensate you. Next one, if the landlord has the right to relocate tenant, are there limits on the number of times the landlord can relocate the tenant? Hey, you don't want to bounce around like a basketball. So again, these are things that people say, oh, that's never happened to my friend. Well, there's a reason there's 327 questions there that it has happened. Next one, does the lease limit where the tenant may be relocated as the same building, the same floor, or within 2 floors of the original floor? So let's say you're in an office building. Okay, and you want to be next to another tenant because of how you complement each other. Those are just little things that are important. Rent, is the rent specifically stated? Okay, you want to be really clear. How is the rent done? So in buildings that have a common walkway like we do in our building, there's what we call usable square footage and rentable square footage. Okay, rentable square footage is what I'm paying rent for. Usable is what I'm able to use. So I pay what we call load, LOAD, factor, so it's about 15% I think in this building, for the walkways and the bathrooms and the stairwells and the elevator shafts and the walkways that come on in here. So you need to understand that you may discover that you might have a lease that says you have 1,700 square feet, but the usable is only 1,525 square feet. So it is really important. You see it more in multi-tenant buildings on multiple floors where the landlord wants to apportion out and he has the load. If the rent is stated in more than one way, such as monthly, annually, monthly per square foot for a full lease term, are the amounts consistent? So you just want to check. If you're paying 1,000 square feet at $1 a square foot, that's $1,000 a month. Is that $12,000 a year? So some landlords quote rents in annual, some quote it in monthly. So at the end of the day, hire a good commercial broker, hire somebody that works with other brokers, that shares their listings, but more importantly, don't work with a broker that does residential. I don't sell houses. If I'm going to go do a house deal, I'm going to go get a house broker to do that. That's what you do. So, Terry, thanks very much for allowing me to do this. Again, my name's Joseph Brady. I'm with the Bradco Companies. Feel free to call us anytime you want. 760-951-5111, extension 101. We'd love to learn how to earn your trust and then earn your business.